The Galactic Council had watched Earth for 300 years. They sent small ships to observe. They placed cameras on the moon. They studied humans like scientists study insects. And after all that time, they came to one simple conclusion. Humans were not important. The Council had 12 member species. Each one had traveled the stars for thousands of years. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had ships that could cross galaxies. And they had rules. The most important rule was simple. Weak species did not matter. Humans were weak. They had no ships that could leave their solar system. They had no shields to protect their cities. They fought among themselves constantly. The Council watched humans kill each other over land, over money, over ideas. They laughed at how primitive these creatures were. So when the Velthari Empire asked permission to take Earth, the Council said yes. The vote was unanimous. All 12 species agreed. Earth had valuable minerals deep underground. The Velthari wanted those minerals. The humans living on the surface were just an inconvenience. Admiral Yun Tai-ho knew nothing about the Galactic Council. He was a Navy man, 42 years old, with a wife he loved and a daughter who meant everything to him. On the day the sky changed, he was at home in Busan. His daughter Dasim was turning 6 years old. The birthday party was small, just family and a few friends. Dasim wore a pink dress and laughed as she opened her presents. Tai-ho's wife, Park Min-ji, had made a chocolate cake. Everything was perfect. Then the sky turned red. Tae-ho heard the sound first, a deep rumble that shook the windows. He looked outside and saw fire falling from the clouds. Not rain. Fire. Bright orange streams of destruction pouring down on the city. He grabbed Dasim and ran. Minji was right behind him. They made it to the basement just as the first blast hit their neighborhood. The house above them collapsed. Dust filled the air. Tai-ho could not see anything. When the shaking stopped, he found Minji lying across Dasim. His wife had used her own body as a shield. The falling debris had crushed her back. She was not breathing. Dasim was alive. Burns covered half her face and arms, but she was alive. Tai-ho held his daughter and looked at his wife's body. Something inside him changed in that moment. The man who climbed out of that basement was not the same man who had gone in. Across the world, the same story repeated. Seoul disappeared in a flash of white light. Tokyo burned. New York crumbled. London fell. The Velthari did not send soldiers. They did not give warnings. They simply pointed their weapons at Earth and fired. 1,200,000,000 people died in the first 3 hours. Cities that had stood for centuries became ash in memory. Governments collapsed. Communication networks failed. Humanity had been brought to its knees in less than a day. Lieutenant Commander Beek Somi was on a ship in the Mediterranean. See when the attack began? She watched as fire fell on the European coast. Her entire unit died when a Velthari blast hit the water nearby. The shock wave threw her into the sea. She should have drowned, but Somi did not drown. She swam for 6 hours until she reached the shore. She walked through the ruins of a French coastal town. Everyone was dead. She kept walking. 3 weeks later, she heard about a crashed alien ship in the Swiss Alps. The Velthari had lost one small scout vessel during their attack. It had gone down in the mountains. Somi gathered what survivors she could find and went to investigate. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. Smooth black metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols on the walls, and technology beyond anything Somi had ever seen. She looked at the alien machines and felt something she had not felt since the attack. Hope. Humans were fast learners. Everyone knew this. Give a human a problem, and they would solve it. Give them a tool, and they would improve it. The Velthari had made a mistake by leaving this ship behind. General Cho Haejin was supposed to be dead. His base in the Korean mountains had been hit directly. Everyone assumed he died with his soldiers. But Haejin was not at the base that day. He was visiting a small village nearby. Pure luck saved his life. When he saw what happened to his country, to his people, He did not cry. He did not scream. He simply started planning. Within a month, he had connected with military survivors around the world. Within 6 months, he had built a network of underground bases. The Velthari sent occupation forces to Earth, not many soldiers, because they did not think they needed many. Humans were beaten. Humans were broken. What could they possibly do? The occupation forces began disappearing. First one patrol, then another. Then entire outposts went silent. The Velthari commanders assumed it was technical problems. They sent investigators. The investigators disappeared too. Director Kim Ji-won had been a physics professor before the attack. She had a husband and 3 sons. They lived in a small apartment in Daijin. They were happy. Then the fire came and took everything. Gon did not die in the attack. She wished she had. For 2 weeks, she sat in the ruins of her home and waited for death. It did not come. So she decided to live instead. Not for herself, but for revenge. She made her way to one of General Hedgen's bases. She told them she was a scientist. She told them she wanted to hurt the creatures that had taken her family. They gave her a laboratory and access to the captured Velthari technology. Within 3 months, Ji-won understood how Velthari engines worked. Within 6 months, she had built a better version. The aliens used something called quantum fold drives to travel faster than light. Their drives could cross 1 light year in 6 hours. Ji-won's improved design did it in 40 minutes. Admiral Taiho joined the resistance when Dassam was well enough to travel. He carried his daughter on his back through the mountains. He walked for 200 kilometers to reach the nearest base. When he arrived, he told them one thing. He was ready to fight. The survivors looked up at the red sky every night. They remembered what they had lost. They buried their dead in unmarked graves because there was no time for ceremony. And slowly, quietly, they prepared. The Galactic Council forgot about Earth. The Velthari collected their minerals and sent their reports. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The primitive humans were dying off, just as expected. They could not have been more wrong 10 years past. The Galactic Council received reports every month from the Velthari occupation forces. The reports all said the same thing. Earth was quiet. The humans were almost extinct. Soon the planet would be empty and ready for full mining operations. These reports were lies. Not because the Velthari wanted to lie, but because they did not know the truth. Every soldier they sent to investigate the quiet zones never came back. The Velthari commanders were too proud to admit they had a problem. So they wrote false reports and hoped the situation would fix itself. Deep beneath the Ural Mountains in Russia, Director Kim Ji-won worked 18 hours a day. She had not taken a vacation in 10 years. She did not want one. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her husband's face. She saw her sons playing in the park. Then she saw the fire that took them away. Her laboratory had grown from a small room to a massive underground facility. 3,000 scientists worked under her command. They came from every country on Earth. Korean, American, Russian, German, Brazilian. It did not matter where they were from. They all had the same goal: make humanity strong enough to fight back. The Velthari. Quantum fold drives had been just the beginning. Ji-won's team improved everything they touched. Alien weapons became more powerful. Alien shields became more efficient. Alien sensors became more accurate. And all of it was redesigned to fit human hands and human minds. Admiral Yoon Tae-ho visited the laboratory every month. His daughter Dassam was 16 now. The burns on her face had healed into permanent scars. She never tried to hide them. She wore them like badges of honor. Tae-ho watched his daughter train with the young soldiers. She was fast and smart and absolutely ruthless. The soft little girl who had worn a pink dress on her birthday was gone. In her place was a warrior who dreamed of revenge. He should have been sad about this. He should have wished for his daughter to have a normal life. But normal lives were not possible anymore. The Velthari had made sure of that. General Cho Hedgen commanded an army of 2 million soldiers. They trained in underground bases and hidden valleys. They learned to use captured alien weapons. They practiced tactics that would work against enemies who thought they were superior. The general was 60 years old now. His hair had turned white, but his mind was sharp, and his determination was absolute. He had lost count of how many operations he had planned. Ambushes on Velthari patrols, raids on supply depots, kidnappings of alien officers for interrogation. Each operation taught them something new. Each captured piece of equipment made them stronger. And each dead Velthari soldier reminded them why they were fighting. Dr. Yoon Yoonji was the Admiral's younger sister. Before the attack, she had been a researcher studying infectious diseases. She had wanted to help people. She had wanted to cure sickness and save lives. Now she created weapons. Her laboratory was separate from the main facility. Only a few people knew what she was working on. The project had a simple name: Silence. Its purpose was simple too: find a way to hurt the Velthari without destroying their planet. Yoonji studied captured Velthari soldiers for years. She learned their biology. She found their weaknesses. And finally, she created something terrible, a disease that only affected Velthari DNA. It would not kill them. It would do something worse. It would make them unable to have children. Her assistant, a young man named Kwandoan, looked at the results with wide eyes. This weapon could end the Velthari as a species, not through death, but through extinction over generations. Doan asked if this was right, if this was moral, if they had the authority to do something so permanent. Yoonji looked at him with empty eyes. She had stopped caring about morality 10 years ago. The Velthari had killed billions without hesitation. They had murdered children in their beds. They had burned entire cities because they wanted minerals. They did not deserve mercy. Lieutenant Commander Beek Somi had become much more than a naval officer. She was now the head of intelligence for the entire human resistance. Every piece of information about the galaxy passed through her hands. She learned about the Galactic Council and its 12-member species. She studied their politics, their economies, their military forces. She found their weaknesses and recorded them carefully. The Council thought they were safe. They believed their fleets were unbeatable. They assumed their homeworlds were protected. Somi looked at their defenses and saw holes everywhere. Humanity would exploit every single one. Captain Han Yuri was Taiho's most trusted officer. She had survived the destruction of London by pure chance. A meeting had been cancelled. She had left the city 1 hour before the attack. Everyone she knew had died. Yuri did not talk much about her past. She focused on the future instead. She trained pilots. She tested new ships. She ran simulations of battles that had not happened yet. And when the time came, she would be ready. The human fleet grew in secret shipyards hidden inside asteroids. Hundreds of ships, each one built with improved alien technology. They were faster than Velthari ships. Their weapons were stronger. Their shields were more powerful. The students had surpassed the teachers. On the 9th anniversary of the attack, Admiral Taiho gathered his senior officers. They stood in a room deep underground, surrounded by screens showing their fleet, their army, their weapons. Taiho looked at each face. Hejin, the general who had built an army from nothing. Giwan, the scientist who had turned alien technology against its creators. Somi, the spy who knew all their enemies' secrets. Yoonji, the doctor who had created the ultimate weapon. Yuri, the captain who would lead them into battle. He told them it was almost time. 1 more year of preparation. 1 more year of building. And then humanity would remind the galaxy why they should never have woken this sleeping giant. Dasam stood beside her father. Her scarred face was calm. Her eyes burned with cold fire. She had waited 10 years for this moment. She could wait 1 more. The Velthari continued sending their false reports. The Council continued ignoring Earth, and humanity continued preparing for the day when they would show the galaxy what happens when you try to destroy the human race. That day was coming soon, Nethera. Prime was the heart of the Velthari Empire. 12 billion Velthari lived on this beautiful world. They had tall crystal cities and clean oceans and perfect weather. They walked through gardens and ate fine food, and never once thought about the species they had destroyed, 3 massive fleets protected the planet. Thousands of warships with the best weapons the Empire could build. An orbital shield surrounded the entire world like a bubble of energy. Nothing could get through. Nothing could threaten them. The Velthari were completely safe. At least that is what they believed. Admiral Yun Taiho stood on the bridge of his flagship. The ship was named Bizon's Vengeance. It was not the largest ship in the human fleet, but it was the fastest and most heavily armed. Taiho had helped design it himself. Around him, 300 human warships waited in the darkness between stars. Their engines were silent. Their lights were off. They were invisible to any sensor the Velthari possessed. Captain Han Yuri checked her screens for the 100th time. Everything was ready. The weapons were charged. The shields were at full power. The crew was calm and focused. They had trained for this moment for years. Taiho looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost midnight on Earth, exactly 10 years since the attack began. He had chosen this moment carefully. The anniversary of humanity's darkest hour would become the anniversary of its greatest victory. He opened a communication channel to all ships. His voice was steady and strong. He reminded them of what they had lost. He reminded them of why they were here. He told them that today, the galaxy would learn the price of attacking Earth. Then he gave the order to attack. The human ships activated their fold drives. Director Kim Ju-won's improved engines tore holes in space itself. The ships traveled faster than light, crossing the vast distance to Nethara. Prime in seconds, they emerged inside the orbital shield. The Velthari had designed their shield to stop attacks from outside. They never imagined anyone could appear directly inside it. They never thought any species could build a drive system accurate enough to navigate through such a small gap. They were wrong. Alarms screamed across the Velthari defensive fleets. Commanders shouted orders. Ships turned to face the threat, but they were too slow. Much too slow, the human fleet opened fire. Yuri coordinated the attack from her station. She had memorized the position of every Velthari ship. She knew their strengths and weaknesses. She directed fire with surgical precision, crippling the largest ships first and then destroying the smaller ones. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the 3 defensive fleets were gone. Burning wreckage floated in orbit around Nethara Prime. Not a single human ship had been lost. Taiho looked down at the planet below. 12 billion Velthari were looking up at the sky in terror. They could see their mighty fleets destroyed. They could see human ships moving into position. They waited for the fire to fall, just as it had fallen on Earth. But Taiho did not give the order to bombard. Instead, he opened a communication channel that broadcast to the entire planet. He spoke slowly, making sure translation systems would capture every word. He told them who he was. He told them what their empire had done to Earth. He told them about his wife, who had died protecting their daughter. Then he told them what would happen next. Dr. Yoon Yoonji's weapon was already prepared. Special missiles carried the silence disease into the atmosphere. The pathogen spread quickly through the air. Within hours, every Velthari on the planet would be infected. Taiho explained what the disease would do. No Velthari on Nethara Prime would be able to have children for the next 100 years. Their population would age and shrink. Their civilization would slowly fade. Not through death, but through the absence of life. He told them this was mercy. Humanity could have done what the Velthari did. They could have burned every city. They could have killed billions in hours. They could have turned Nethara Prime into the same graveyard they had made of Earth. But humans were not like the Velthari. Humans believed in justice, not just destruction. The punishment would fit the crime. The Velthari had tried to end humanity's future. Now their own future was ending instead. The broadcast ended. Taiho sat in his command chair and watched the planet below. Somewhere down there, parents were holding their children. Somewhere down there, people were crying and praying and wondering what would happen next. He felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not joy, not even the relief he had expected. His wife was still dead. His daughter was still scarred. The billion people who died on Earth were still gone. This victory could not bring any of them back. Captain Yuri approached him quietly. She asked if he was all right. He did not answer for a long moment. Then he said that he was fine. He said they should move to the next phase of the plan. The next phase was simple. The human fleet would not return home. They would go to the Galactic Council instead. They would demand answers. They would demand justice. And if the Council refused, they would demonstrate what humanity could do to any species that threatened. Earth, Dazim found her father in his quarters that night. She sat beside him without speaking. They looked at the stars together through a small window. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was the ruined city where her mother had died. Taiho told his daughter that he hoped she would have a better life. He hoped that after today humanity would be safe. He hoped that future generations would never know the fear and pain that her generation had experienced. Dazim shook her head. She said she did not want to forget. She said the scars on her face would always remind her. She said humanity should never forget what happened when they were weak. Her father nodded slowly. She was right. Forgetting would be dangerous. The galaxy was full of predators who would attack any species that seemed vulnerable. Humanity had to remain strong. Humanity had to remain ready. The fleet began moving toward the Galactic Council's headquarters. Behind them, Nethera Prime grew smaller in the darkness. 12 billion Velthari watched the human ships disappear. They knew their empire would never recover from this day. And somewhere in the galaxy, the other council species were receiving reports about what had just happened. They were learning that humanity was not extinct. They were learning that humans had better technology than they did. They were learning that everything they believed about Earth was wrong. Fear began to spread. The Galactic Council Hamber was enormous. It had been built to impress visitors with the power and majesty of the 12 ruling species. The ceiling rose hundreds of meters into the air. Massive statues of ancient leaders lined the walls. Floating platforms carried representatives from different worlds. Today, the chamber was filled with fear. High Counselor Morith of the Deloni Collective sat in the central seat. He was old, even by his species standards, and he had served on the council for over 2 centuries. He had seen wars and disasters and political crises, but he had never seen anything like the reports arriving from Velthari. Space. The humans had destroyed 3 fleets in less than 20 minutes. They had appeared inside an orbital shield that was supposed to be impenetrable. They had weapons that were more advanced than anything the Velthari possessed, and they were coming here. Representatives from all 12 species filled the chamber. They argued and shouted and blamed each other for the disaster. Some said they should prepare for war. Others said they should surrender immediately. Nobody knew what to do. Then the human ships arrived. 300 warships appeared around the council station. They did not fire. They did not threaten. They simply waited in perfect formation. Their weapons pointed at the heart of galactic civilization. A message came through the communication systems. A human female speaking in perfect council standard, a language no human should have known. She said her name was Beek Somi. She said she was the ambassador from United Earth. She requested permission to address the until Morith wanted to refuse. He wanted to order his guards to destroy the human ships. But he looked at the tactical displays and saw the truth. The council station had no weapons that could threaten the human fleet. Any attack would be suicide. He gave permission for the humans to land. Somi walked into the council chamber with her head held high. She wore her old naval uniform, still marked with burns from the day she had climbed through the wreckage of a crashed Velthari ship. Behind her walked General Cho Hejin and Director Kim Juan. The chamber fell silent. 12 species stared at 3 humans. These small, soft creatures had just defeated the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. These primitives had done what no other species had managed in 10,000 years. Somi stopped in the center of the chamber. She looked up at the floating platforms where the counselor sat. Her eyes moved from face to face, studying each alien species. She had spent years learning about them. She knew their secrets, their weaknesses, their fears. She spoke in a clear, calm voice. She told them about Earth. She told them about the cities that had burned. She told them about the 1 billion people who had died. She told them about the children who had been killed for the crime of living on a planet with valuable minerals. Then she told them what she had learned. The vote to destroy humanity had been unanimous. Every species in this chamber had agreed that humans should die. Every counselor had decided that Earth's resources were worth more than Earth's people. Counselor Drath of the Corvani Federation tried to speak. He wanted to explain. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to negotiate, so Mai stopped him with a raised hand. She said that negotiations would come later. First, she wanted the council to understand what humanity had become. General Hedgen stepped forward. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Images appeared of the human fleet, the underground factories, the millions of soldiers waiting on Earth. He showed them the weapons that humanity had built, each one more powerful than the alien technology it was based on. He told them that humans had spent 10,000 years fighting each other. Every war taught them new lessons. Every conflict made them more dangerous. The Velthri had made a terrible mistake by attacking Earth. They had given humanity a reason to stop fighting itself and start fighting together. Director Juan spoke next. Her voice was flat and cold. She explained the science behind human improvements to alien technology. She described how they had built better engines, better weapons, better shields. She told them that humans had done in 10 years what other species had failed to do in centuries. Then she showed them something terrifying. A database of biological information about each council species, detailed analysis of their genetic weaknesses, proposed weapons tailored specifically to each race. The humans had not just studied Velthari biology, they had studied everyone. The chamber erupted in panic. Counselors screamed at each other. Some tried to flee. Security forces did not know what to do. The carefully maintained order of the Galactic Council collapsed in moments. Somi waited for the noise to die down. Then she spoke again. She said that humanity did not want war. They had proven they could destroy any species that threatened them. Now they wanted peace. But peace would come at a price. She listed the demands. Territory from the Velthari Empire as payment for their crimes. Technology and resources from every council species for the next 200 years. A permanent seat on the council with the power to veto any military action. And a guarantee that any attack on Earth would be met with total retaliation. High Counselor Morith finally found his voice. He called the demands outrageous. He said the council would never accept such terms. He said humanity was small and young and had no right to make demands of ancient civilizations. The lights in the chamber flickered. Every screen showed the same image. Human warships surrounding the station. A reminder of who held the power now. Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. She asked Morith if he wanted to test humanity's resolve. She asked if he was willing to sacrifice his species for his pride. She reminded him that the Velthari had made a similar choice. Look what happened to them. The argument continued for hours. But everyone in the chamber knew how it would end. The council had no choice. They could accept humanity's demands or face destruction. One by one, the species agreed to the terms. Some were angry. Some were terrified. Some were simply relieved that humans did not want revenge against everyone. The vote was unanimous, just like the original vote to destroy Earth. This time, humanity won. The treaty was signed on the same day that the council had voted to destroy humanity. Admiral Yoon Tai-ho insisted on this detail. He wanted the anniversary to mean something new. Not just the day of sorrow, but also the day of triumph. His daughter, Dassam, stood beside him as the alien leaders pressed their marks to the document. She was 16 years old, with scars across half her face and eyes that had seen too much death. She did not smile as the treaty was completed. This was not a moment for joy. This was a moment for remembrance. 60% of Velthari territory now belonged to Earth. Hundreds of worlds, billions of resources, and strategic positions across the galaxy. The empire that had tried to destroy humanity was now paying for its crimes. The other council species watched in silence as the terms were finalized. They would send their best scientists to teach humans. They would share their technology and their knowledge. They would pay tribute to Earth for 200 years. The students had become the masters. High Counselor Morith spoke to Taiho privately after the signing. He asked why humanity had shown mercy. He asked why they had not destroyed every species that had voted against them. He seemed genuinely confused. Taiho looked at the old alien for a long moment. Then he said something that Morith would remember for the rest of his life. He said that humans had learned something important from the Velthari attack. Cruelty creates enemies. Mercy creates opportunities. Humanity wanted to rule the galaxy, not destroy it. But he also made something very clear. This mercy had limits. If any species threatened Earth again, there would be no second chance. The weapons that humanity had built were ready. The soldiers that humanity had trained were waiting. One wrong move would bring total destruction. Morith nodded slowly. He understood. The humans were not kind. They were not gentle. They were simply practical. Dead enemies could not serve them. Living enemies could. In the years that followed, humanity spread across the stars faster than anyone expected. The first colony ships left Earth within months of the treaty. They carried millions of people to new worlds, far from the ashes of the old cities. Director Kim Gi-won, retired from the military, and started a university on one of the colony worlds. She taught physics to young students who had been born after the attack. She told them about the science that had saved humanity. She did not tell them about the weapon she had helped create. Some secrets were too heavy to share. General Cho Hejin became the commander of the United Earth Defense Force. He built bases on 100 worlds and trained soldiers from every human nation. His hair turned completely white, but his mind stayed sharp. He wrote books about strategy and tactics that became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. Lieutenant. Commander Beak Somi remained on the council as humanity's permanent representative. She watched the alien species carefully, looking for signs of rebellion or treachery. She found plenty of both, but she handled each situation with skill and patience. The council learned to fear her quiet voice and sharp mind. Captain Han Yuri became Admiral Han Yuri. She commanded the largest fleet in human history. Stationed at the border between human space and the remnants of the Velthari Empire, she never forgot the day London burned. She never let her guard down. Dr. Yoon Yoonji continued her research in secret laboratories. She created new weapons, each one more terrible than the last. She hoped they would never be needed. She made sure they were ready, just in case. And Admiral Yoon Tae-ho, who served for another 20 years before retiring. He returned to Earth and built a small house near the place where Busan had once stood. A memorial park now covered the ruins. Millions of names were carved into black stone walls. His wife's name was there, Mark Minji. He visited her every morning. He told her about their daughter. He told her about the victories and the peace and the new life humanity was building. He told her that everything they had suffered had meaning. Dawson grew into a leader in her own right. She became a diplomat, then a politician, then the first president of United Earth. Her scarred face became a symbol of human resilience. When she spoke, billions listened. On the 20th anniversary of the attack, she gave a speech that was broadcast across human space and beyond. The alien species heard it too. They needed to hear it. She spoke about her mother, about the moment when Park Mingi had thrown herself over a child to protect her from fire, about the price of that protection, about the scars that would never heal. Then she spoke about the future. Humanity had been small and weak, she said. Humanity had been dismissed and forgotten, but humanity had survived. Humanity had grown, and humanity would never be vulnerable again. She looked directly into the cameras. Her eyes burned with the same cold fire they had held since that terrible day when she was 6 years old. She made a promise that every species in the galaxy would remember. Never again. Never would Earth be attacked without consequence. Never would humanity beg for mercy from creatures who had none. Never would her people face extinction because others thought them worthless. The speech ended. Across human space, people celebrated. They had survived the worst thing that could happen to a species, and they had emerged stronger than before. But they did not forget. Every year on the anniversary, every human colony went silent for 1 hour. Billions of people stopped what they were doing and remembered the dead. They remembered the cities that burned. They remembered the families that were destroyed. They remembered why they must remain strong. Admiral Taiho spent that hour at the memorial, as he always did. Dasam joined him when she could. They stood together before Minji's name, father and daughter. Survivors of a war that had changed everything, the galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were not primitives to be ignored. Humans were not resources to be harvested. Humans were the most dangerous species in existence, and they would never let anyone forget it. A saying spread among the alien races, whispered in fear whenever humans were mentioned: never wake a sleeping predator, and never ever make humanity angry. The Galactic Council had been left speechless that day in the chamber. They remained that way for generations. It created their own nightmare by attacking Earth. Now they lived with the consequences. And somewhere in human space, children grew up learning history. They learned about the attack and the war and the treaty. They learned about the heroes who had saved their species. And they learned the most important lesson of all: the universe is dangerous. Trust no one completely. Always be ready to fight for your survival. Humanity had been unleashed. The galaxy would never be the same.